Yeah.
See you, Dan. That's awesome.
Great stuff. Well, I will hand you over to Dan.
Great stuff. So you can all see the slide. Can you see the slide?
Yeah, we can all see it, mate.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, Ron. So yeah, thanks very much. And obviously, thanks for Ben for the invite. It's good to collaborate with Ben, and obviously I've known him for years, probably since we're about 5 or something, or 7, 6, something like that. But anyway, we go back. Ben and I were always entrepreneurial, and Ben and I had our first businesses, but we won't go into that. But we could talk about that perhaps later. And I think it's all about sort of learning and failing ultimately, and what we're doing here has been a lot of learning and failing as well, right? So definitely an important message when you're setting up the company like this. So I'll just go a little bit into what we do, and I'll talk about really sort of like how it all started. And so let's just go to the next slide. So yeah, in 2013, I was driving very late in lots of congestion from Camden to the Royal Albert Hall. I got given some tickets by my parents to go and see the Cirque du Soleil, which was a nice treat. So it's probably about 6 miles. It probably took about 2 hours to drive there in London streets. And when I arrived, I didn't plan at all, and I just turned up hoping for the best, as you do when you're driving. And the only thing that was free on the curbside, and I'm talking about the bit that divides the pavement and the road, was this little picture here on the right hand side of that little yellow line. And the yellow line was empty, but everywhere else on the streets were completely full, and all the paid bays were jammed, and all the residence bays had like permits, like restrictions until about 10 p.m. So I had nowhere to go. And there was this yellow line right opposite the entrance, which you can just see there. And I was just about to drive off, and a traffic warden walked past, and I said, "Can I park here?" Because there was no information, no signs. And he was like, "Yeah, you can." And I was like, "Well, where's the information?" He goes, "Oh, there's a sign 2 streets away." So at that moment, I thought, "Wow, that's like really powerful information. If I knew that I could do that." So it was all about this sort of like this world. So I went in to go and see Cirque du Soleil, and all I could see in my head was sort of like the idea of all these zones in the wrong place, and they're all very deeply confusing. And you've got to have a PhD a lot of the time to understand what's going on with these things. So I thought, well, this is not very good. And the curbside it's a bit of real estate. It's a commodity, and I want to use it, and I want to pay for it if I have to, or if it's free, I don't. So I kind of started thinking of like the world like Tron, especially with all the sort of lights and visuals that are going on in the Cirque du Soleil, and people about to break their necks hanging off sticks and swings. But all I could see was basically like a world like a Tron, where there's all the roads were sort of divided up with digital lines. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if we could sort of digitize the paint on the road and create digital maps, and then I could then decide whether I drive in or not based upon if the parking restrictions are good or if the availability is okay. And obviously the parking industry, as we kind of know it today, still is like the Ringos, pay by phones, and you've got to have like 10 apps on your phone to sort of try and park anywhere from one place to the next. So I was like, well, wouldn't it be nice to have payments in there as well? So it was like the idea of having everything loaded into your app phone. And one day I thought, well, what happens if it goes into a car? So you'd have information about the restrictions, about the destination. You can see if it was the occupancy, if you are, if the chances are you can get a space or not. And then when you arrive, you get seamless payments. So it was a pretty audacious sort of like thought. And really, when I was left the Royal Albert Hall, I should have parked that idea and and got back to my day job. But I went home and I thought, well, this kind of data must exist, right? And I'm not sure if you guys have used, obviously you use Google Maps and Apple Maps and TomTom and Here and stuff like that. Who out of none? Actually, the screens are off. But have you heard of City Mapper and used City Mapper at all? It's basically a commuter's tool in cities that allows them to choose between rail, bus, bikes, and stuff like that. So it's like a multimodal app. But ultimately, back in the day, you'd try and jump on the bus network and hope for the best. Whereas this app told you when the buses were coming, so you became better at planning your journeys, and you could sort of get your ETAs better. So I thought I could do something like that. And what Citymapper had done was got data from the Transport for London and turned it into a really good shop window, essentially, because public sector is good at data sometimes, but not very good at making it meaningful for a customer. So I got home and I started to go onto local authority websites. And what I was faced with was basically parking maps like this. And this was their digital version, their attempt. This was 10 years ago. And all these things were like, some of them were like on literal old A to Z maps, some highlighters around different zones, people scribbling on sort of like the controlled parking zones, bank holidays. And obviously in the more sort of like intense urban cities, and like London is definitely one of those, and Cardiff is pretty dense as well. Like there's more restrictions because the restrictions are there to ultimately help the residents park, and it stops people coming in and sort of like abusing the curbside outside someone's house. So this is kind of like the middle one was London, Camden, where I live, and there's like 53 zones there. And from one side of the street to the other, it can be free parking on a weekend, and the other side is restricted for 24 hours, 7 days a week. It was that sort of different. So this was not machine readable. Like, it wasn't a data feed. There was nothing digital about it. So what I started to do is print these individually off and started to stick them on my wall like a big jigsaw piece. And these are just 3 boroughs, but there's 33 boroughs. And some boroughs actually didn't have any data at all, no maps and no sites to go to. So what I started to do is jump on my bicycle then, and then cycle around London to start making maps and piecing together the jigsaw piece that was missing, and create one sort of like digital blueprint. And I used a Google Map tool, which I had a friend help me build. And I thought it was just going to be like Monday to Saturday, Sunday restrictions, what time you can and can't park. And then what I realized, there was the match days, there was bank holidays, and the list kind of went on about these different edge cases and how complex the restrictions were. So I thought, well, I need to start doing, actually on the right-hand side there, that little pink area, you can see these are all the different variations on the zone. So that's how complicated it was starting to get. And I thought, well, this is going to get really tricky. So I need to make a platform that can actually sort of manage this data like a content management system, and then actually be able to sort of like take on all these endless edge cases that were coming my way. I'm open. If you guys want to ask any questions at this point, I'm happy to take any questions. Otherwise, I'll crack on.
I've got one about how you managed to digitize this data. Was it just manual shape files and things on GIS, or did you outsource it, do it yourself?
Yeah, so I had a Google, as I said, I had a Google web app that I made, and I just sort of draw polygons around it, and then attach some times to it, really, in a simple table. So that was it. Obviously, now we're doing some pretty cool stuff, and I can talk about that in a minute. But that's really how it started, was just basically, very primitive. And then I chucked all those like JSON object files, put it into an app, and then I exposed it over Google Maps to show the images, show the layers.
Thank you.
Ultimately the problem, right, when you use Google, you put in the house or the building, but that's not where you can park. Right, it's actually the place you want to go to, but you can't leave your car there generally half the time if it's in the city. So it's actually A to somewhere near B, and that somewhere near B causes huge problems in cities, because about 30% of all congestion on our road network is actually looking for a parking space. So it was all about solving that sort of like hyper-local destination problem with the great curbside intelligence was the goal. Google doesn't do a great job, but the granularity of the curbside is so like complex and unique and localized that Google doesn't really want to touch this problem, because they want global solutions. So we went at it as a very, very sort of like granular, intense sort of micro level, and working on ways to scale it. So now we've got sort of a scalable solution now. So just quickly on the problem, this actually slide's a bit out of date now, but so 20% of the emissions in the UK are from the 27% of the total emissions are from basically vehicles, which is a huge amount. There's 40 million vehicles in the UK, basically all are having a parking disaster waiting to happen. And only about 500,000 now are EV. So it is actually, the sales are coming up hard and fast, but obviously it's in areas where, you know, there's a good demographic that can afford it, and also where infrastructure is in place on either driveways or on street to facilitate it. And that's not possible. And you might have seen the Conservatives saying they're pushing back the the war on motorists because it's the affordability to allow people to continue to buy petrol engines, which is, it's not a bad thing as long as they start doing other measures. Like, do you give them better data? How do you optimize today's fleet? Also, there's about 55% of the UK don't have a driveway. So if EV is the future, then on-street charging is essential. So there's a lot of things like that. So yeah, 122 million tons of carbon comes out of the vehicles, which is a third of all emissions. So it's huge. And actually, what we've got, I can talk about that in a minute. We believe we can take about 13 million tons out using our system now. So about over 10% with our existing technology, with existing coverage. So it's a huge problem, right? And actually, there's one thing. There's 23 billion from the UK economy. There's a little bullet point down here, but 23 billion is taken from the UK economy because we're all just basically driving blind. So it's a big problem. So the problem really, and I'll kind of go back, step back a little bit here. So the cities have to use traffic order acts, and it's a really boring, long text-based format. And what if it describes basically the street? There was no maps, and it was invented or written in 1984, which is like 39 years ago. And it was the same time that they banned smoking on the underground and made it illegal not to wear a seatbelt. And time has changed an awful lot since then, but the cities are still being dealt this really bad hard card where they have to use regulation from 39 years ago. So the way we kind of solve this problem, as I said, I wanted to sort of combine mapping, like, can I park there? I wanted to provide occupancy data. Is it free? Should I even bother? What also, predictive or real time? And then when you arrive, payments. And actually now with EVs, it's charging as well. So I've always built this platform with the idea of it having these three core products at the bottom, which could then you build different software and solutions on top. And what I realized is that it was really hard to keep on top of all the restriction data, right? And all the different granularity, especially when you can see it at that level on the right-hand side. And the only way I was ever going to do it is by giving cities the tools and the dashboards and the mapping and the software to actually do it. But I had to convince them over the past 10 years that there are better ways to do it because they were using a system that was really out of date and not fit for purpose. So it's a two-sided platform, but the special, the USP that we've got is that while the city needs digital maps because of the regulation stuff, occupancy data is needed so they can understand what's going on the network and actually make better decisions about planning and place and buildings and the size of the network. And also they need cash as payments for obviously revenues. The same three ingredients is required by us as drivers, right? We drive around and we want to know where can I park, is there a space, and can I pay? So it's turning the three ingredients into basically two different products. And that's a really powerful proposition for us because we sit right between the public and private sector, which is an extremely hard place to be, right? Most people go into public sector and have a lot of money from big investors to sort of continue that, like drive in, or the guys like Capita and all these huge companies. So we're a really small company taking on a ridiculously ambitious solution. And then on the other side, there's apps like Ringo, Pay by Phone, who just literally go, we're not touching public sector really. We're going to take their money and offer really bad services to the city and just cash payments to the driver, because they knew that that B2C model, the business to consumer model, was a kind of scalable, more achievable one based upon putting in some marketing fund. So we became this sort of B2G, the business to government. We became a B2B2C, which is like businesses taking our data into consumers, and a B2B product. So for a very small, we had a very big ambition for a very small company. So, but I think you have to dream big, right? And then if you fail, then you've learned a few things. So, so that's kind of like the sort of premise of the platform. Any questions so far? No. So this is kind of I can sort of probably been speaking enough now. So I'll just kind of show you what the app can do. So let me just see if I can. Where's my screen? I'm just going to do a screen mirroring and go over here. Right. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, this is AppyParking. So we do have Cardiff, I think. We've got a bit of Newport, but again, what we don't have is, oh, hang on, sorry. What? I'm kicked out of my app. Hang on.
You kicked out your own app?
No, I've done the time so I can have restrictions in the day, but it's now kicked me. It's now put a freemium model, which isn't going to work. Okay. Well, no, this isn't. Well, anyway, so what we have, this is, yeah, so I basically cheated the clock, so it would go back to like daytime restrictions, because right now everything is not. But what you can see here basically is like we've got the whole curb map now, and as you drive along, you get like all the restrictions, and where these little pink crown signs are is actually information. Hang on, let's just see if I can. Yeah, no, I've messed it up. Don't try and cheat the system. But you can see here, like from one side of the street, it's free, and you can park there for 19 hours at the moment. And on the other side, you can pay for you've got to pay £3.85. So it gives you all that granularity, and also does single yellow lines and double yellow lines and all that sort of stuff. So it's a really sort of powerful visual experience. And also what we've got in here is the ability to put in who you are. So like blue badge. So you can see then where your blue badge is applicable. And it's not going to work because I've got behind the paywall. And a whole sort of curbside then turns into a blue badge view. So you can see where that blue badge is you can park for 3 hours, 24 hours, 1 hour, for example. So here's a few more. Here's the disabled bays. But with the premium feature, you'll be able to see, you know, the whole curbside. So really powerful visualization, just sort of taking away that sort of complexity at the curbside.
I thought
what we have is,
just park anyway.
Well, not really. Yeah, not really. And that's the problem. There's a big problem with that. And the let me just stop this. Yeah, so in London as well, there's like different rules applied to it. So lots of blue badge holders get like millions of pounds worth of parking tickets, and it's a breach of the Inequality Act of 2010. So there's a way for local authorities to actually be more abide by the Inequality Act and show the data in a digital format, because otherwise you have signs that are like 10 meters long with all the information for different types of people, because behind every single parking sign is like hidden regulation. So that's really the essence of what the company's all about. I could probably go on. Well, yeah, happy to take some questions, and obviously there's sort of like how I raise capital and that sort of stuff. So thank you.
Awesome. That's really good. Thanks, Dan. We got a few hands up at the moment. Dan, can you stop screen sharing now, just so that we can see everybody on there? Yeah, and we can see whose hand is up. The first hand up this evening is Darius. Good evening, Darius.
Good evening. Can you hear me well?
We can,
Yeah.
yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dan, for the presentation. It's been amazing. Just a quick question. I think you did mention that the authorities have an end site of your app to actually update the information and changes. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we're working with over 10% of local authorities. Cardiff is keen to work with us, but we have to go through a bit of like language. We've got to do Welsh as well in the platform. So it's obviously it's a small market, Wales, but we really want to go there as well. But we have to be able to present the app and the platform in Welsh, which does cause a big cost for us unless the Welsh government pay for it. But ultimately what happens is the cities will ask us to create a digital map of their curbside. And what we do is use two types of surveys. One is either like a Google Street View. So we'll map using 360 panoramic photography, like on Street View. But Google is about 15 meters accurate to the real world, whereas we do about 20 centimeter accurate. So very accurate survey grade maps. And then we can then use machine learning on the images and then turn those images into digital GIS files, map-based files. Some cities want us to use LiDAR, And LiDAR is like crazy expensive and crazy accurate. It creates like basically a digital 3D model of the whole. Anything that I can see becomes a 3D model. It's like being in a computer game, and that's 3 centimeter accurate maps. And you can then sort of like point your mouse from the top to the bottom of a curb or a lamppost, whatever, and it gives you down to the nearest 2 centimeters how big that asset is. So it's an incredibly powerful tool where you can do like 200 miles a day and build digital twins of your cities. And then the city so we do that for the city. Then they use our traffic order management system, which is all the legal grade documentation. So I can just quickly show you that actually, 1 second. So this is kind of like, this is Southwark as a local authority. We've got obviously the map of the UK, and some more cities are coming on as our customers. So you go down in here, you can see all the different types of sort of like curbside. And in here is like what's this one here? WL line. And you click on here, and then this is all the different documents behind the proposal. So if I go into here, a sec, you can see then all the boring stuff behind the scenes. So behind every meter of curbside where we have customers, we've digitized all the traffic orders as well. So all this stuff. You see that? So every time you want to change something on the street, like change a paid bay to an EV bay, or change a disused car club bay to a disabled bay, the city has to go through all this regulation stuff, and it can take about 6 months and cost £20,000. So it's a hugely inefficient process, and we're streamlining that to then allow the cities to provide better digital services, better curbside access for the drivers to get around. Did I answer your question?
Yes, it did. Yes, I was only wondering, going on the back of that question, because you described authorities as your customers. But is that not adding up an extra layer of work for them, or is your app, in a sense, streamlining their own processes? And are you then, in a hand, not concerned about them introducing certain charges for updating your system?
So there's two. This is rough numbers. 400 local authorities in the UK. 200 of them have legal obligation to manage the curbside using traffic orders. And those traffic orders they have to use an old system, like this paper-based system from 1984. So there's an obligation already there. It's costing about £1 billion a year for 200 local authorities. So there's a lot of money. And what we're doing is speeding up that whole process to allow the cities to speed it up by about 75%. So what it means is we allow the cities to do more, better curbside services, basically.
Awesome. Does that answer your question, Darius?
Yeah. Yes, it does. Yes, thank you.
Ah, fantastic. Any more? Because I'm sure Dan will be welcoming to a question. We've got James. James is putting his hand up at the moment. James.
I got two fingers up, so kind of two questions. So the first would be, do you do any integration with sort of NCP car parks or things like that as well? And then the second question would be, have you considered, or do you do any user sort of crowdsourced data gathering?
Yeah, so the first question, we don't really focus on off street, to be honest. We did for a while, but they're two very different worlds. Like we're processing over like 500,000 different restrictions across 550 towns and cities on the street right now. So it's a big data problem with high granularity, and there's big consequences if you get it wrong, which is you guys get a parking ticket, right? So that's not nice. That's quite a big responsibility for me when people go, I got a ticket using your system. So I feel obviously very bad, but I try and tell them that we're trying to do something. We're on a journey together, right? So the car park stuff is been solved by, like, there's companies out there which do it, but again, it's not very accurate because a lot of these guys don't really care about being digital, because you go into a town and you just instinctively go, I'm going to Cardiff, I'll pop into NCP. So their mentality is, they've got a tower block and they'll fill it. But actually going forwards, like, you want to be better optimized. You want to like plan your destination. We'll try and get nearest to, I don't know, John Lewis as possible, whatever, if you're like loading, unloading. So them slowly coming up to speed. And there's a whole new initiative now. I was literally at the Conservative conference today, and yesterday they announced the National Parking Platform, which is a system that we've been working on with the government to create a digital platform like ours, but a very dumb version, like it's like version 1.0, that allows car park operators and councils to come on and offer their inventory in one place. So once that's live, we can put on NCP, QPark, and all the other ones into our system and take bookings as well. So I'm glad I didn't go down that route, because it has been a problem solved for us by the government anyway. So I've been picking my battles in places. I've been going to the hardest place possible, which is the curbside, and the car park stuff is more easily addressed. In terms of crowdsourcing, like I said, when you get it wrong for the customer, it costs a lot. But obviously, you know, in London particularly, and well, lots of places, we can save you £5 in one go. Like it's that binary from one side of the street to another. We can find you places that are free to park or not. So in the app, we do say, if you find data that's wrong, please get in touch. If you open the app and we haven't got data, we say we haven't got coverage. So let us know if you'd like us to cover your area. And we're trying to build that momentum at the moment. As I said, it's very granular and it's very personal. Like the curbside and the car and the parking experience is always like the driver always feels the pain. So trying to get them, like, you know, they just want to park the car and be done with it, to be honest. So that whole crowdsourcing element is, I'm really up for it. It's just trying to, but the engagement inwards is not always there, which is quite weird. So, but yeah, the button's there, and I'd love more people to go, I want this. And ultimately, what I'm trying to get is build a bit more of a movement of people to go, well, I want this in my local authority. Go and loan to your local authority, your elected members and your MPs, and go, why isn't my local authority doing something like this? So that's kind of what I'm trying to get to, is get people to help on the campaign, because it makes a lot of sense to have just, you know, the digital curbside of the UK.
Cool, thanks, Dan.
Awesome. Fantastic question. Great answer. I think Dale, who is showing us the Valleys Property Group, Dale's got a question for us now.
Hi, Dan. How you doing? I'm thinking, if I'm off to London this weekend and I think, right, okay, I'm going to look for somewhere near a certain location to park. If I find somewhere that on your app that's relatively well priced, I think, right, I'm going to park there. Does that integrate into some sort of sat nav to get to it?
So we did have a navigation turn by turn in the app, and we've just turned it off actually, because it wasn't the best. There's a company called Mapbox. It's like a SoftBank, a big VC backed company. We still use Mapbox as our base map, but what we're doing now is, if you press your destination, you go direct me, and you can choose the app of your choice in your phone. But future down like about, well, in January, probably Q1 next year, we're going to integrate Google Maps into it, and then we can use a software pack in our app that offers turn-by-turn navigation with real-time dynamic rerouting in our service. There will be a bit of a premium to that, because Google charge us for that. But the more we can keep people from A to B to P, right to the destination journey in our app, that's really valuable, right? So it's from a sort of advertising perspective and all sorts of things. But yeah, but really, in this day and age, I didn't really want to be an app. I wanted just to be a data feed into other apps. But all those global players want basically global data, and doing what we're doing is, you know, we could do global, but we need a lot more money and a lot more teams across the world doing it. So, but you know, next decade.
And then secondary to that, you mentioned about bay parking. I noticed that in Cardiff, and I'd imagine it's going to be the same in London, there are sensors on the ground in the bays to see whether there's vehicles parked in them. Do you tap into that network as well?
Yeah, I mean, they're actually ripping up. They spent about £3 million in Cardiff, and now they're ripping up. That actually went to tender without going to tender, so that was a bit sneaky. We lost out on that one. We do have the largest deployment of sensors in Europe, so we've got about 8,000 sensors now. We've got 3,000 going down in Coventry in EV bays. We've got 2,500 in Harrogate on and off street, and then there's other things in car parks. So yeah, the problem with that one was that those guys solved one problem, which is it available? And the problem is, that's great, right? That everyone wants to know, should I bother turning up? But surfacing that data is always the problem and always has been. Like Westminster had sensors at one point and ripped them all up, because you can't just expect people to download an app that has availability without the other questions answered. And so it's always a bit cart before the horse, that was. So there is great merit in real-time sensors, and actually what we're doing is building up like heat maps of cities from people using our app, either to go, I want data, or I'm here and I'm going there, and we can actually build up sort of just basically heat maps profiling where people are going from and to. And so without the need for sensors, which are really expensive and a pain in the arse to do, to be honest, we can do sort of quite high predictive availability just using machine learning and algorithms.
Great. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for your questions, Dale. And great to see you on here again. Reese, you got your hand up again.
Yeah, my question is, how did you start to build a company? Well, I suppose two parts really. How did you start to build a company that really, I suppose, has quite a lot of moving parts and quite a lot of sophistication to what you're doing? And then second is sort of, at what point did you go for external finance, and how did you sort of put that into it as well?
Yeah, good questions. The first question, how did I build a company with lots of moving parts that's quite complex? I basically didn't listen to anyone who said don't do it.
Yeah.
Everyone said you're doing too much. Everyone said don't do it. And I was like, well, you can't make parking forgettable if you don't do all of it. So it was basically just it was like a do or die. I was like, there is no plan B. And I also, my old job, right, wasn't technical at all. I used to be a creative. Like, all I was at school was good at art, right? I was not, academic in the slightest. So I was just good at ideas and good at presenting, communicating. So my old job was writing ads. So I used those skills to kind of go, my vision is this, and like selling a dream. And so I just basically, to that point, then I kind of like, you always have to prove people wrong as well, right? Because most of the world are naysayers, and 90% of the world are sheep. So you have to be like, you got to put yourself out there. You got to go, I believe in this, and I believe I can do something that's going to make a huge difference. You can pick off small cogs and you'll get like bought by a big machine, but we made this thing which is a huge platform and a huge machine. But I wouldn't be achieving the results and the stuff if I didn't do it all. So the way then I kind of raised finance was that I basically had some money in the bank, which I wanted to build my little garden shed with. And I thought, when I looked at my little bank statement, I thought, well, I could build a shed and then just go and do it, or I could put that money into sort of living off beans on toast and renting my place out on Airbnb, and go and sleep on my friend's sofas, and use that money to basically give myself a year's runway, and just push it as far as I could. So I gave up all my job. And then I went around trying to find some technical experience, because I didn't have a clue, So I found this guy who's good at building apps, and they always say the founder is not the mad person; it's the person who follows the founder is the mad person, right? So I found this guy who's mad enough to follow me, and we basically had a blast, right? We had a lot of fun. It was really intense, really. We worked like we were like alcoholics. Sorry, we worked like workaholics, and we drank a lot as well. And we basically just got this app into the App Store, and it was just a shop window. All it was no supporting infrastructure. It wasn't on any cloud services. The whole thing was just loads of data into a very primitive app that I designed off the fly as well. I kind of went onto YouTube and just understand what dimensions I had to use to make a visual button and stuff like that. So I was learning on the fly all the time. And so I got it into the App Store, and then went down to a department in London, which is called London Councils, which basically represents all 33 London boroughs. And the guy there said, yeah, I love what you're doing. You're crazy. you're never going to succeed, but I'll support it because it's clearly the right thing to do. So I presented to all 33 local authorities, and they thought I was just a madman. They thought they just could not understand what I was doing and why. They just didn't like. It was like a big UN summit meeting with 33 parking managers of London, and all they care about is making money off parking fines. You know, they don't want better services.
They don't want to make it easy, do they?
Yeah. So, but at that meeting, there was a guy who's head of fleet at BT. Bryn was his name, and he had 8,000 fleet in London, and he had a £4 million parking fines, and then £1 million apartment processing the fines up in Coventry. And he came up to me at the end of it and said, I love what you're doing. Can I have your data into my services? And so I was like, oh shit, there's a really big enterprise problem I'm solving, because I thought it was just like me. I thought it was solving a problem for me. But actually, there's 4.6 million car trips that happen in London every day, and 40 million drivers are lost every day, and 1.4 billion in the world are lost every day. Big numbers, right? And behind it is a big amount of pain. So at that point, I kind of went home and thought, Christ, okay, well, there's a sort of my enterprise thing. So I went, and then there's some good tax solutions which come from government, which allow you to invest into startups. So it sort of helps to help the startup industry. And there's got EIS and SEIS, so it's for seed funding. And you can all put in about 100,000 or 150, and you get like 50% capital gains relief on your income as well. So it's a good way of offsetting your tax. So there's SEIS and then the EIS, which is when you can raise about 1.5 or up to 10 million, I think, on EIS. And that gives you 30% tax relief. So that, without sort of that SEIS tax relief and getting, I basically was in a pub one night. I showed this guy who was, doing all right. I showed him my app. He goes, oh, I love it. How much do you want? I said, well, I'm raising about 150 grand because that was my SEIS, my limit. He goes, oh, I'll put in 25. And I was like, shit, all right. And then I went out the next day for a pint, and someone said, I'll put in 25. I was like, oh Christ, I've got 50. And then trying to get the other one was really hard, but like I managed to get then about £200,000 my first investment. And these guys just literally took a punt. And they always say, don't bet on the technology, just bet or don't bet on the horse, bet on the jockey. And so if you go in there with the confidence and you go in there just going, I believe in this, and because it is pot luck, it is completely, there's not many people go into well, I went to it completely blind. I didn't know about business, I didn't know about apps, I didn't know about public sector, I didn't know about data. All I knew is I've just got to keep on learning. So it was a really exhausting sort of like couple of years where I blocked myself in my bedroom, and I basically I was calling the councils, I was mapping the streets, I was learning about business and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a bit of a it was pretty exhausting, right? It's like an endurance race with no ending. Yeah, they're pretty sadistic, to be honest. So then when I did that, I then got some additional funding. I managed to get, so there was Ford did a publication on the internet, and it said City Challenge, help decarbonize streets. So I applied for this thing that Ford had put out, and we won this competition. We won 40 grand. And I was like, Jesus, this is amazing. I'm 40 grand off Ford. And they came in and signed all these NDAs and stuff like that. And basically they wanted me to be the software developer. Bearing in mind, there's only two of us, to do some ingestion of data. And bearing in mind, I didn't have a clue about anything. So they wanted us to do some data translation from traffic orders and put it into their service. So we started, then on the back of that, then I went out and I raised £1 million because I had some more proof of concepts. And traditionally in investment, and when people invest in sort of companies and venture capital and stuff like that, they'll always label you. You're either seed, Series A, Series B, Series D, and there's like Series A is basically MVP, like minimum viable product, proof of concept, stab in the dark, see if anything sticks to the wall. Then there's Series A, which is like you've got your product, MVP. It's now about productizing it, and it's about then sort of getting sort of proper market fit. And then Series B is about then using the money to then go pretty much into marketing. So you've got your audience, you've got a market fit. Then it's about sort of exploiting the market with a big marketing fund. We were not in those categories because we didn't have the data. Like I had to go and map the streets. We didn't have the market, and so it was a really hard time where in this sort of place where you're labeled, I couldn't be labeled because I was none of it. We were just right now, I'd say we've got the product fit, and I've raised 22 million quid, right? So it's taken 10 years and 22 million quid to get to a place now where I would consider myself like a Series B, which is nuts. So it's very like in the world of UK money, and UK is awful for startups. It's apart from some good SEIS and EAS tax funding, which kind of gets the company up to there. The bridge to try and get companies from sort of like the product fit into scale and into those unicorns that America are spitting out left, right, and center, there's a huge delta. And government needs to step in and stuff like that and support companies where they're like, we're just about to go blast off, but we're still missing, we need a bit more rocket fuel. So basically, when I back to sort of raising the money, so you just got to keep on proving people wrong. You got to keep on engaging people. I mean, I spoke to pretty much 300 VCs in London, and they all said no, right? And that takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, and you just got to just pick yourself up and just go, well, fuck you, I'm going to move on. Pardon my French.
Next one. There'll be somebody out there.
Yeah, there's always someone like that. There's literally it's kissing frogs, right? It's like there's millions of people out there which are right, should be right on paper, but in reality, it doesn't ever come out. So you just got to keep on kissing frogs. And at that point, basically, I got the money, got £1 million quid. I got some money from Hyundai because they're investing in autonomous vehicles, and our data was so granular that they knew that our data would help their vehicles kind of navigate the streets automatically. And then a big Japanese company was doing car sharing schemes in the Nordics, and they wanted our data to be like the digital rails, like the air traffic control for their fleets. In the pandemic, that all got shelved. So all my corporate sort of what they invested in me, I was like, what I was using them for all died because of the pandemic and all the corporate churn. So all these guys on my board kind of like buggered off. So it's been a really volatile and interesting time. And when I speak to Ben sometimes, like he hears the highs and lows.
I certainly do, mate. Honestly, it's been so inspirational talking to you. And when you said all the people that said to you don't do it, I never said to you don't do it. I sat down with you and said these very words: "Are you fucking mad?" I believe were the words that I actually used, rather than saying that to you. But no, it's been and just going back to what Dan was saying about Airbnb and renting his house out, that's just pure dedication and commitment to the hard work and the. And when you see this, I struggle to understand what it is because I'm property, I'm bricks and mortar through and through. So when Dan was telling me about the amount of money they've raised and obviously the corporate value of this intellectual property that's in the cloud, he had to take me outside because I couldn't see where it actually was. We went outside, I still couldn't see it, but it's in the cloud somewhere and it's doing really, really well. So I think we've got a question from Isabella. Have you put your joint out yet?
I have, yes. First off, Dan, amazing. I've just downloaded the app, and my day job is I'm a fundraising manager, so I've got about 16 staff driving around different sites. I've just forwarded that to them.
Okay.
My daughter lives in Brighton. She moved to Brighton, and when I go down there, it's just horrendous trying to find. So I've just sent that app to her to download. Okay, so just to tell you, I'm kind of supporting you on this. just very quickly, just money numbers. How much is the premium if you want the full kind of shebang on the app?
So it's £1 for 24 hours. So if you're in a city, you can use it like a day pass. And it's £5 a month. Oh,
that's brilliant. That's nothing. Oh, well done, you. Thank you. It's absolutely awesome. I really enjoyed this tonight. Thank you.
And just in terms of setting expectations, right? Because like Ben said, I was on Dragon's Den and I went on way too early, and it was a great ad on BBC, which I didn't have to pay for. But what it proved was that the UK wanted it, but it's like having an iPhone 15 with no telecommunication tower, and it doesn't work. So it's good in principle, but you need the network and the coverage. And for us, that whole coverage thing was like, how do we do more coverage? How do we do more cities? So actually, Brighton is very good data, so you have a very good experience.
Yeah, I could see that. I went on there and I could see there that there's lots of data on there, and there's this nightmare to park in Brighton, and you just,
but if there are
it's a
areas
one-way system, so you're actually constantly driving around. And I just looked and I thought, oh my God, that's amazing. So I've sent that down to my
always
daughter.
always go to the destination, search the destination, and then always put in the time you want to get there, because then then you realize then there's free areas and stuff like that. So just always plan before you go, and put in the time because the streets are quite dynamic. But yeah, like I said, you know, if a lot of you guys are in Newport, Wales, or wherever you are across the UK, you know, if the data is not great, it's an awful experience, right? So, but that problem is getting solved, and over the next 2 years, there's a big sort of push from government, and I'm pushing really hard now with the ministers, because they've got an awful lot to prove to try and get the votes before the elections. And one of these things is obviously pro motorist, and one of the things to help motorists is a digital map of the UK. So I'm right in the sort of like right at the sort of forefront of trying to push that. So at one point in the next 2 years, there'll be data across the whole of the UK, so you'll have a great experience.
Is it not better from your model, because you're data driven, and it says Amazon, how they made their money, they're data driven. Is it not worth to give the product away for free to get better data to sell on the back end?
There is that model, right? And I think, you know, if you're not the product, you're paying for the product, which is the Google model. There is we have hyper-local data. We know where people are searching from, going to. You know, we've got more granularity on our customers than Google have. Like, you know, there's people who go, where you park your car, do you go into the pharmacy, where do you go next? That sort of advertising part. So, you know, like I said, we have been really busy building the foundations of this platform, and what is yet to come is still yet to be decided. Because,
sorry to interrupt, Dan. You said you're going for your next round of funding. I've got a fiver. Anyone else want to come in? Anyone else got?
Well, we might. So I've raised. I'm literally halfway through my last raise that I'll ever need. Touch wood. And so I've just raised 3 million. And I'm raising another 2, and I'm getting some potential term sheet tomorrow. And if I'm not happy with that term sheet, I'm going crowdfunding. And so there is an opportunity generally, if you do want to participate. I'm going to crowdfunding, which then invites the nation to get on board, and then go on part of the journey. So it's just to fill up, to get an additional 2 million that gets us to the break even. So if you are interested, I can send it to Ben if it does go live in the next sort of like 5 weeks.
Exciting stuff.
Will I get some free advertising on the app in the meantime for our business?
I think Dale's got another question. Dale, question?
Yeah. The further we go into this conversation, the enthusiasm and passion for this is electric. I imagine going on Dragon's Den was a bit of a, like I said, it'd give you the free advertisement for the app. But going in with your valuation of £10 million, and then to come out with 2 dragons with offers, to say no to them, although they did value it down at £1 million. How did that make you feel? Most people who go on there will take any sort of funding, but to actually go on there, get 2 genuine offers, although at a lot lower valuation, how did that make you feel? Did you expect to, obviously, I imagine you expected to be knocked down, but did you expect to be knocked down that far?
Yeah, I mean, they just take the piss. I mean, before you go in, you know, there's these very self-important runners and BBC producers marching, like, you know, there's 12 of you in a row outside the studio, and then they're like a sergeant in an army going up and down, eyeballing you, going, who do you think you are? You better tear your valuation down by half. And that was even before you go into the Dragons. So all these poor companies and founders went into the green room, and I was like, guys, do not cut your valuations in half. Like, because when you go in, they're going to cut you in half. So the tragedy is that half these guys who get the offers have already half their valuation before they've gone in the first place. So it's psychological warfare, and it's basically a TV show, right? And 50% of all offers made on air don't make it through to actually to a deal. So it was always for the show. It was never for the money. And I just had to make sure I didn't look a tit. That was basically my main objective, was just to stay very straight-faced and laced and hold my own. But I was in there for 2.5 hours, right? They cut it down to 15 minutes. So it was 2.5 hours of a proper grilling.
So could I ask what would have been the lowest valuation that you would have taken?
It would have been 10, because I'd raised money at that valuation, and really, people say there's sophisticated investors, there's dumb money, smart money, all that sort of stuff. They're not smart money. And also I knew what the world I was in and what money I really needed, and they weren't ever, Peter's connections with Google. It doesn't take much to go and email someone from Google to say, come over chat. I did. That was the first one I emailed someone from Google when I had the idea. I was like, I've got an idea. They're like, go and do it then. So it's not really, you can have a contact, but they always say never hire anyone for your black book, because the black book rarely comes off.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. I can remember that day so well. Do you remember, Dan? We'd been away on your stag weekend, didn't we?
Oh,
it was there that night, and yeah, it was good. But didn't you say, how many emails did you receive on the Monday after it screened on the Sunday evening?
Oh, it was thousands. But the on that night the server went down. There was like 8 of us in the company at that point. So I was doing the PR, I was doing the customer success response, I was doing everything. So everything went down. We had to then, it broke the cloud, and then I had to sort of mop it all up. So it was, first of all, problems, because it kind of just demonstrated the demand. But we did let a lot of people down.
Brilliant. I mean, it was quite a show. If any of you guys want to see it, you can actually Google it, and you can get the clip. It's on YouTube now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's no word of a lie. Let me all tell you just a little story here. I was on holiday. It was 2019. I was in the Maldives. There must have been 150 people on this island. Yeah. And I kind of connected with the very few British people, as people like me do. Yeah. I was there by myself, so I needed a little bit of company. And I was sat on the sun lounger one day, and the guy next to me, Andy, who we're still friends with now, he was on his phone watching stuff, and I could hear this voice on his phone. And I thought, just know that voice from somewhere. I know that voice from somewhere. I said, what are you watching? He said, Dragon's Den. I said, are you watching the AppyParking? He went, yeah. The guy with the yellow bow tie? I went, yeah. I said, mate, he is one of my closest friends. You know, the guy who gives you, again, the you are full of shit look. So I had to show him pictures of Dan's wedding, which I was the stand-in best man. That's another one of our crazy stories. That's another story. Stand-in best man with, what was it, half an hour's notice to do the speech? Dan's best man, unfortunately, contracted novavirus. So we're all sat there in the ceremony. This guy's like bending over. I said, Jesus, mate, are you really that nervous? And he's like, no, I just don't feel well, Ben. I don't feel well. So in the end, James had to go. And Dan said to me, he gives me this file. He says to me, Ben, just do the best man speech, will you? What? But it was a great day. It was a really good day. And what I'll do is, I think there's a YouTube video of it somewhere, because it's quite funny, because it describes.
Dale's just put it in the group.
Sorry?
Dale's just put it in the chat, I think.
What, the Dragon's Den?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was going to say there's also a YouTube video of my best man speech, which explains the entrepreneurship that Danny and I shared in the early days, from our car washing days to our video production days. We've done it all over the years. I think we did all that before we were 16, didn't we? So yeah, it was happy days. I think Darren's got a question. Darren Archer. Darren, welcome.
Welcome. I was just thumbs up to it all. Congratulations, Dan. Everything, like we mentioned, the hard work is paying off. I know through everything that what you've given up and sacrificed, and the effort you're putting in, and it's credit to you and your team and everyone around you.
Oh, thanks, mate. Thank you.
But yeah, no, one of them was really about the raising the finance, and like from yourself turning it into where you are now is sort of top tips. Would be a good starting point.
I mean, yeah, like I said, obviously never take no as the answer. I think never be afraid to talk to someone about what if you have an idea, because chances are they'll never do it, or do it as well. So never, don't be protective. I think it's all very well. I think the leap of faith that I did was it was all about circumstance and timing. Like, so I didn't have kids then. I was not in a relationship, or probably just coming to the end of it, and then I became just basically could become that workaholic. So that gave me the luxury because there's nothing else to worry about. So I know, like, now I'm older and I've got the kids and all the responsibilities. It's difficult, but again, so we took on a huge thing. But again, it's sort of like, if there's something burning inside you, just go for it if you can, and just what are you happy. If you lose everything, what are you happy with? What's left is like my motto always. It's kind of like all in and go all in on black. And if it all goes, tits up, then it's not the end of the world, because I've learned an absolute load along the way. Just I can apply that elsewhere. So I've always had that sort of like, I've been flying a plane into, when you're raising finance and you've got to feed at some point 75 people, and this business won't monetize until I've completed the bridge. It's like building an oil rig or building a bridge or a toll bridge. You can't monetize half a bridge or sell half a car. You've got to make the whole thing. And so that takes a lot of patience, commitment, and focus and communication, just to go, we're on this journey, and we're going to get, and this is when we get to the other end, and this is when we can actually cut the ribbon and start monetizing it. So it's just about, for me, try and be as clear and set expectations and transparency as possible. Otherwise, people do get rattled and they do get, this and that. And so just that over communicate as well with your team about where you are, how you're getting on, how you're all going to get there as well. Because I've got some team who've been with me for like 7 years, which is through probably the grittiest times, because it's not all been pretty at all. But there's still guys there and girls who are fully committed and love seeing where we're going. So I think from a co-founder perspective, like the guy who was technical, he was great at building apps. He didn't have the skills or the leadership skills, nor did I, to be honest. But I had to sort of learn fast. But the person you're with is probably rarely the person you exit with on a business journey. It's quite rare, I think. The ideal is you find a founder, you build a team, you have them as the family, and you go as this incredible nucleus into eternity. It doesn't really happen like that, and I kind of wanted it to be like that. So I was getting upset when we lost people, because it's like part of our tribe leaving. So you've got to be, I think it just makes you realize it's business. People have their own agendas, and you just got to crack on. But you can still do it by being nice and just communicating.
You're always too nice, mate. You're always too nice. Hey, listen, the last time I was down with you in the offices on Old Street. Are you still in the same offices, by the way? Because you were moving, weren't you?
Yeah, we moved. We're in. Well, we work now actually down in Aldwych.
Yes, yeah, because you were in Old Street last time I was with you.
Yeah.
Exciting day, because we went to Hampstead Heath, which is close to where Dan lives, and we went to Ricky Gervais's house. But that's another story for another day. When I say we went to Ricky Gervais's house, we weren't invited. Can you remember that? You're like, go and knock on his door. I'm like, no way. We've always had fun, despite obviously, there's a lot of seriousness, the business, the finance, the money raising, the technology. But there's also got to be an element of humor in there as well. There's got to be an element of good fun in there, which Dan always manages to inject into every situation. Every time we've done everything, stuff together, we've always come out laughing, haven't we? It's just, it's always been a journey, and it's always been good fun. Has anyone got any more questions before we round up for the evening? Because we've all got, obviously, Dan's got to go and help his children to bed.
They're in bed now.
Oh, they're in bed now. Well, that's fine. Let's carry on then. Let's crack on. Let's tell some dirty jokes now. The kids are all in bed. Come on. Anyone got any questions? Anything to round the evening off with? No? Okay. Well, what I'd like to do is thank everyone for coming on board on the webinar. I'd like to apologise for everyone that couldn't get on. Obviously, this will be a video going out, so that's all good. I'd like to thank Jamie for all this really hard work in obviously creating this, all the technology that goes behind it, the text messages and the emails and everything's automated. And a really special thank you to my very good friend, Dan Hubert. Thank you, Dan, for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Dan.
And if you want any, advice, just ask Ben, and happy to sort of, if you need anything. So I'm always here.
That sounds good, mate. That sounds good. Thank you so much. Love you all.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
guys.
Guys, bye bye.
See you soon.
Cheers, everyone.